I'm going to talk ever so briefly about snaps. I did this once before. It's been a while. So I wanted to see if snaps worked any better now than they did almost a year ago. And a year ago, I wrote to the Destination Linux group to ask them their opinion. When I install a snap, I cannot install plugins for those snaps. Specifically, I had Blender installed and I wanted to install a plugin to make a better exporter for Godot, and I couldn't install the plugin. So here's what the Destination Linux group had to say. The email they're reading from is my email. This was back in April, almost a year ago.
Dale writes in to say that he's a 14-year Kubuntu user with an observation. He installed Blender to make things for Godot and installed the Snap version on Kubuntu 1910 for Godot. He needed the better Collada exporter plugin, so he downloaded it, he unzipped it, and moved it to the plugins folder in Blender. Now, he says he couldn't do it. Snaps, at least this one, don't install into the user area, and since KDE Plasma Dolphin uses root, is broken, and apparently will never be fixed, he couldn't find an easy way around it. So his easy way around it was to remove the snap in Blender, go to the Blender website, download for Linux, unzip it into his user space, and that worked like a charm. He'll likely never use the snap again unless that's the only way to install something. He asks, is this a bug or a feature? Is this how appimage or flatpak works? Last but not least, this is a 14-year Kubuntu user and just switched to Manjaro, and he doesn't like it. Okay, fine. He loves it. Sorry. If he switches to the testing repo, which he has done, does that mean that I can say that he runs Arch? Love Dale. So first of all, yes, that means that you can say that you run Arch. Manjaro counts as Arch.
Yes.
And second of all, yes, that is the way that snaps and flatpaks are designed to work. The idea is it gives them access to the least amount of access on your system possible. Now, there's all sorts of flags that you can use that will give certain snap packages access to more of the system. And so, for example, I install Telegram this way because I want Telegram to be able to save to a different download folder than just the little snap folder that it does by default. I'm curious, I guess Michael or Ryan, do either of you run into problems with snaps and their permission issues? I know I've hit an issue where it doesn't respect my system theming, and that drives me nuts, and it's actually one of the reasons I don't use snaps in certain situations.
I mean, I'll be honest, I use snaps, flatpaks, app images, whatever's available, depending on the project, if it's not in the repository already. So it's not something I'll go out there and just look for. So I have very limited amount of, even though I say that, I have a very limited amount of them because for the most part, I'm going to look in the general repository first. And then if that's not available, then I'll check a snap or a flatpak or an app image. So I don't really run into a lot of issues with the type of programs that I use, like Joplin and others, where it's just not something where you have any permission issues. But I could certainly see that being an issue for people who are utilizing those for different applications. I was curious, Dustin, I would think you would hear a lot more about this being in the Ubuntu Budgie world and doing a lot of the server work that you do. Do you run into those type of issues with the universal packages?
Well, there's always going to be some issues, but here's the thing that people need to take into consideration. Depending on who's built the confined application, sometimes dictates what the experience looks like, right? Like people like to blame the packaging format, but the reality is third parties can package these applications. It's not always the upstream developer. It's not always someone who may be super knowledgeable of these formats. And depending on how you author it, depends on how the user experience looks like, right? So if you forget to use one of the plugs in a snap package and you don't grant it particular access or permissions, something's not going to work. In this specific email, one thing that stuck out to me is he's speaking about how he can't put something in the plugins folder because it doesn't install into the traditional locations. What some people may or may not know is that within your home folder, there's a snap directory where it keeps your user data. And so if you're reading documentation and an application saying, hey, here's where you put these plugins, you have to kind of consider, and this is maybe one of the, I don't want to say it's a failure, but caveats or things that need to be smoothed out is the universal packaging formats usually have a relative path within the confined environment. So if the plugins folder exists in location A, in this, I'm going to use Snap as an example because I haven't packaged any of the other ones. There will be a relative path, usually in your home directory, that you can still have things like plugins or additional data that you need to do for configuration. So a lot of applications, instead of being in your .config folder, it'll be in like /snap/snap name /current /config, and there it goes. So there's a couple little oddities and things like this, but it's a little bit of user education. It's about these things kind of getting to this point where they're commonplace, I guess, to where people are aware of these sort of caveats.
And the tutorials are updated to reflect it, right? Because like you said, if you're looking at a website and it has a tutorial to show you, navigate here and then put it there, that's what people who may not be experienced and assume that's where everything goes, not realizing, well, I use the Snap version, I need to go through a different path.
But see, here's the thing. If the upstream developer didn't package that application, they're not going to update their documentation to do it. So if just someone in the community decides to package application A,
really good point.
They may not go to the application author and say, hey, do you want to add this to your installation instructions? Here's the caveats. Here's how it works. Here's what you need to do that's different. Most people probably won't even think about that. They're just so happy to get the darn thing into a store and make it easy to install that there's other aspects that just kind of go over the head and maybe aren't considered. And, it'll get there as people become more familiar, but there's just
don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Hang in there. Things will get worked out as don't throw out universal packaging just yet or write it off.
If I can add an addendum to that, I would say don't permanently throw out the baby with the bathwater. At the moment, there are absolutely times where I choose not to use a Snap package because of some of the lack of functionality or lack of integration in with the system. It's early days, I think, for universal packaging, and so I think it's important to keep in mind that this is not what it's going to look like long term, and I don't think there's any rush to get onto to universal packaging. If it's the only way to get an application, so be it. But if you have another option, and if you could just sudo apt install a package versus sudo snap install package, and you want to do that because you get a little more functionality, I don't see anything wrong with that for a little while.
So I actually like what Noah had to say, that it's a new thing and it may not be ready yet, and they're going to work on it, and it could be better, and they're probably going to make it better. And I agree with all that, mostly. And a good example of not ready yet, but we're using it anyway, is Pulse Audio. And an even better representation is Wayland. I have Wayland running on my laptop over here. It's running LXQT Monjero. It runs great. My wife's laptop, KDE Plasma Monjero, running Wayland, runs great. I can do screenshots using KDE Plasma in Wayland, but I can't do screen record with OBS yet. I know they're working on it. As soon as they get that working, I will probably be fully engaged in Wayland. Until then, this system has Xorg because OBS. So let's talk briefly about my most recent Snap experience. This is a Snap install of Inkscape. I want you to see where the user config and user extensions path. Look at the path here. Very strange. The reason I say very strange, this is an app image, and I'll also show you a flatpak. Everything but Snap uses the same location, which is your username, .config for hidden file, Inkscape. There's your extensions for Inkscape. Everything uses the same thing except for the Snap. The Snap uses a strange one. Uses all this blah, 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 etc., and it finally ends up in config Inkscape. And if I open this, it opens to where the other ones also open, which is strange. It's that long. It's strange. But the problem is it doesn't work. And I'll show you. Make a shape, extensions, Inkscape, ink stitch, troubleshoot objects, doesn't do anything, break apart objects, doesn't do anything. It doesn't work. Even with it's obviously installed in the right place. It sees it, but it doesn't work. It doesn't even complain when you don't do something right. It should complain and say that converting to a satin stitch only works from a basic line. Didn't even do that. So let's close this snap install out. Let's get rid of that. Now let's look at, this is flatpak. Flatpak works. Flatpak has my toolbar on the side over here. Really nice. When it starts up, it's always like this. I can make it big and close it out. When I start it back up again, it's like this. Another problem, not really a problem, but irritant, is my fill and stroke. It always starts with that one defaulted. But I can do a line or a whatever. It may have kept it that time, and I may just go back to the flatpak just because it does work pretty good, and I can do ink stitch, troubleshoot objects, and it works. So let's close that out. That is a flatpak. Everything works, but it doesn't remember things. This is an appimage. So appimage, let's see, everything just seems to work. Troubleshoot objects, all shapes are valid, everything works. But the problem with the appimage, I don't have a toolbar on the side over here, and I can't make it be over there. I can float it, and it does remember my last thing. It does remember this, which is awesome. I can't put it in the toolbar section. And that is also with what is it? Interface. Is it Windows? Yes. Dockable. And right now it's floating, and I can't make it dock. Strange. I don't understand that. But it does work. I could use this. I could easily use this if I needed to. Now my objects isn't showing up. Okay, this is the app image. Let's bring it back up. There's my objects after I've reloaded it. But again, I can't dock it. Very strange. So I'll probably revert back to the flatpak. They all have issues, and I think the flatpak one has the least issues. So, anyway, what's your opinion on snaps and flatpaks and app images? And I really want the repository Inkscape because it would most easily update as needed. It acts exactly the same way as appimage. I don't have docs over here. But anyway, what's your opinion on any of this? I'd like to know. And if you know how I can get my toolbar back over here, I would love to know it, so that it's not just floating. Iconify doesn't work. That just closes. And then when I open it back up, I still can't dock it. So let me know in the comments what you think. Thanks for watching.